So Isaiah 52, chapter 7, reads like this. This is what Isaiah writes. He says, "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who bring good news. The good news of peace and salvation. The news that the God of Israel reigns." You see, this was pretty common actually back then as Isaiah's writing this, that when your country or when your city or when your king went to battle, most people would go into the mountains and hide during the battle, and they would wait to find out. They didn't know if they won the battle. They didn't know if they had victory. They didn't know if they were going to be enslaved or free people. They didn't know if their king had reigned, if he had won. And so they would wait in the mountains, and then the messenger would show up with the good news. Freedom, salvation, your king reigns. I love how Paul ties this in to the gospel. In Romans chapter 10, starting in verse 14, this is what Paul writes. This is one of my favorite passages in all of Scripture. He says this, "But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they've never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless somebody tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring the good news." Just like back then with Isaiah, when people would wait for the good news to find out if they had victory, to find out if the king won. People today are still waiting for that good news. And church, we have the good news. It is the gospel. In fact, that's just what the word gospel means. It means good news. And we have that good news, and there's people waiting to find out, was there victory? Waiting to find out, am I free? Did the king win? And so my question to you right now is real simple. And it is this: are your feet beautiful? Are your feet beautiful? Are your feet the feet that carry the good news? You see, that was actually a common term back then when Isaiah wrote this. If you were receiving good news, you were waiting for beautiful feet to bring you good news, because beautiful feet brought good news. And so my question is, are your feet beautiful? You have the good news. You have the good news of the gospel. You have the good news of Jesus Christ, that the victory has been won, that we are free, and that the King reigns. Yet, is that message being brought to the people who desperately need to hear it? Do you go into the mountains, as Isaiah says, do you go into the mountains to the places where the people are and bring the good news? I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you right now. Be somebody who has beautiful feet. Be somebody that carries the good news, just like Paul wrote in Romans. How can they believe if they've never heard? Church, you are being sent. You are being sent. Jesus put us on a mission. He sent us to the lost, the hurting, the broken, the needy with this good news. So today, I want to challenge you. Today, this week, bring the gospel to somebody who is in desperate need. Love you guys. I'll talk to you later, family.